Hey kiddos, we're back, 9th day. We're going to create this cute farmhouse pillow today. Well, we're going to start with the back of one of those Santa sacks that I did the first day. And I told you I save everything. So we're going to make a pillow out of it because I just couldn't throw that material away. Hoarder you say, crafter I say. You're just going to fold it in half and cut it in two, and that's going to make the front and the back of our pillow. I use pinking shears, but you don't have to. You could use regular cutting scissors. This is just, these pinking shears are really sharp, and so they cut it really well, and that's why I used them. So the next thing you're going to need to do is go to your computer or a coloring book. I went online, and I don't know if you can see up there, but the search that I searched for was Christmas tree pattern, black and white, and then I took pattern out and put clip art, and that's how I come up with these, what I would call coloring book Christmas trees. I just went through there scrolling down, and to see which one I liked, I double clicked on it, and then I said copy image. I right clicked and did copy image. Then I took it over, I went over and opened up Microsoft Word, got a new blank thing and did paste, and pasted it into a blank picture. Now the reason I did that is so that I could adjust the size. So I needed like 3 different sizes. All right, so I'm going to print the big one, and I'm going to adjust the margins because I want to get it as big as possible. I go into margins or layout, then margins, and put narrow. And that lets me scoot it on over. You see how it took the border smaller, and I can drag it by one of those little circles at the bottom to make it bigger or smaller. Now what I'm going to do is go to print and then hit print, one copy. All right, once that prints, then I'm going to shrink it down to a couple of inches. I'm going to go back to that little circle and drag it back down. See, there I go. All right, and that's going to be my medium size one. Then I'm going to go to print me another copy. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to shrink it down one more time because I need 3 sizes. Grab the circle, scoot it down, go to file, go to print, and there I have it. Now I'm going to take all these copies that I printed them off on. I would suggest, if you're going to use them more than once, that you'll want to do it on cardstock, but I have 2 in cardstock and 1 in plain paper, and they work just fine. Now, I used this chamois from Dollar Tree to cut these trees out of because they were white and just so stinking fluffy. I just loved them. Now, I cut my trees out just with regular scissors, cut them out, and then I'm taking a Sharpie and I'm going to trace around them. And I'm trying to get the most out of my fabric, so I'm, fitting it to where I can. I just trace around each one, and I'm going to do 1 big one, 2 mediums, and 2 smalls. Well, I started out with pinking shears and quickly decided that regular shears would have been a better idea. Now for this next part, you're going to need an iron or an ironing board. That pad is an old ironing board pad that I took off, folded it in half, and sewed around it to make me a tabletop ironing board because I'm cheap and I didn't want to pay for another one. Plus that one folds up and fits in the closet. So I take this and I'm going to start folding up about a 1/2 inch around the edge. And all I'm doing is I'm showing you there that I'm going to use iron-on tape, or hemming tape, which is the same thing for us short people we hem our breeches with. You tall people wouldn't know anything about that, though, I'm sure. So now I'm going to cut the corners out. So how I just folded it over, I unfold it, and I cut from the point to the folded line point. And then I cut a triangle off of each edge so that I can make it fit, look like a mitered corner. It doesn't have to be exact. It's just so that your material is not too thick in your corners. You don't want, by the time you add the other one on, you're going to have two of them. So here what I'm doing is I'm laying out the little trees on there to get a good pattern. And I've noticed that some of these trees are overlapping like 3 pieces. Well, it made it too bulky. So what I did was where it was overlapping, where there would be 3 pieces, I just cut those off to make it lay a little flatter. Would it have been all right to leave it? Yes, but it would have been lumpy, and I didn't want it to be that lumpy. It could be a little lumpy, just not too lumpy. Now, that glue I'm using is Aleene's Tacky Glue. It's in a bottle. I know I have seen this at the Dollar Tree in smaller bottles. This is one that I have had, I'm going to tell you, probably 10 years. And it had a little film on the top of it. I pulled the film off of it and used it. This stuff is sticky. You'll see here in a minute where I'm just barely into it and it starts sticking all over my fingers. Now, I'm sure that's probably because it's old. And, I've had it for so many years. So I cover the Christmas tree completely, okay? And then I'm going to press, I've gotten a pretty good coat on it, and I made sure I got all the tips really well. The center's not such a big deal, but those branches are. So once I get it on the fabric, place it where I want it, I'm really smushing that glue down into the other fabric because I want it to adhere to that. And I'm trying to get my placement right because here in a minute, you're going to see I'm only on like the second tree and the first tree, or I'm on the third tree and the second tree is already stuck down, and it was a matter of minutes, and it was already like, that might not have come back off. Now I try to keep it off of the front cover, because if the front of the trees, because if you don't, your tree's going to get stiff. And you don't want that. So you don't want so much that it's gushing through to the front of that chamois, but you definitely want it to go through that back fabric. And I put quite a bit on there, so you'd really have to gush it up if you were to do that. Now see how I've put the biggest tree in the middle, the medium trees on the sides, and then I'm putting the little trees in the gaps. And that was just the pattern that I wanted to use. And of course, you could change these colors up to anything you want. But my living room is white, grays, tans, and wood color. I also have a lot of greenery in there, but I really don't have any colors. So I'm trying to keep it more of the minimalistic farmhouse look without any color. For just maybe this Christmas. I just haven't picked a color. I cannot decide what color I want. Now, after it dried a little bit, I flip it over and I'm going to iron it. Now, make sure that your steam is off on your iron. You don't want it to make the glue wet with the steam. So I covered it with this, I don't even know what you call it, Silpat is what I'm thinking they're called. These are what I use to iron t-shirts on with my heat press. But a pressing cloth would work the same way. So a tea towel, a silicone mat, something like that you can heat up. Now then, I've got it all ironed and it's dry, and I'm going to put the other one on. I've already ironed the second one around the edge, and now I'm going to lay out the hemming tape all the way around it. Now, if you don't have hemming tape, but you have a thread and needle, all you have to do is sew it, or sew it on your sewing machine. I used hemming tape because I didn't want to have to drag out my sewing machine. What I'm doing now is, you can see where I cut it short, and that's so I can stuff the pillow. I need to put the stuffing up in there, and so you have to have a hole when you do a pillow. Now I'm laying the second one on top, or the back side on top, and I'm matching it up as best I can, and then I'm going to take the iron with no steam and go all the way around the edges. Now you're going to see in a minute there are holes in some of it because I didn't let it sit long enough. Again, I'm too impatient to wait. But what you can do with this hemming tape, even if you used it on your britches, you can go back and reheat it, and it will heat back up and stick to it. It's wonderful. Well, you know me, I just got to fuss with it. But anyway, I'm going to show you here in a second that it does have places on there where I didn't heat it up enough, and there's holes. Look. So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to take the iron again, and I'm going to heat it up, and I'm going to fix it. It was just an easy fix. You know, just go back and iron over the top of it, and what it does is it heats that fusible web, is what it is, back up, and makes it stick again. So even if you pull it apart, you can re-iron it and do that. Now, so I want to go around the edge because it looks a little plain to me, so I want to give it a decorative edge. So I take some embroidery floss and I use all the strands to it, and I use a yarn needle. That was a mistake. Going through that hemming tape with a yarn needle took forever. So what I would suggest is either you using less plies or threads of the embossing thread, it's not embossing thread, it's embroidery thread, going back and using a sharper needle with it, maybe pulling it apart and only using a couple of strands of it instead of full force, or a sharper yarn needle, because a yarn needle is just not very sharp. It's for plastic canvas, but that's what I had, so that's what I used. That's usually how it works with me. So I'm just doing a simple up and down stitch that makes it look like dashes. I'm really stuck on dashes this week, so like dashing through the snow. Anyway, I know, don't sing to me. Anyway, so I go all the way around the pillow until I get to where the hole is that I'm going to need to stuff the pillow, and then I stop and stuff the pillow, and then again start back and finish sewing it. And poof, magic, it's all the way 3 sides around. So now I had this old pillow, and the threads in it, you can see, are pulling through the seams because we've just wallered it to death, and it had Coke stains on it where the kids had wallered it. So I just took the pillow out of it because I was going to throw it away, and I thought, no, I'm going to save that stuffing because it's $5 a bag. Now look there, I saved that, and look, saved myself $5. Now I know you got some old bed pillow you don't like anymore, or the kids have wallered to death, and that, take the stuffing out of it, save the stuff, and throw the innards away, or the outside away. Now then, I'm going to push this up into the corners so that I can get good pointy pillows. Now, in the end, I wound up not getting enough in there, and I should have done it fuller, but it looked full to me until I started trying to pull out of the middle for the corners. Even though I poked it in there, I should have stuck more in. You always overstuff because in the end, it's going to flatten out anyway. So now I'm going to close the pillow up, and I've measured out, roughly how much tape I'm going to need. I just cut it or pull it apart. It's pretty easy to break. And then I'm going to iron that piece back in there. Now that I got it closed up, I'm going to finish my sewing decorative stitch all the way across the bottom. So now I'm just going to tie the knots on there, and I'm trimming off the little extra pieces, and you can see that the back of the pillow the stitching looks the same as the front, and that's because I just used that simple back and forth pattern all the way around. Now I am pulling, what I'm doing is I'm poking the corners down in the pillow, and then I'm grabbing a hold of the stuffing and pulling it back into the corner. And then I'm pushing it up in there with my finger so that I can get pointy corners. You don't want saggy corners. So I do that on all four sides until I get it like I want it. I'm wallering the pillow to death, I know. But push, push, and poof, it's finished. So now I'm going to make some tassels for the end of these pillows because it's just still a little bit too plain for me, and the corners didn't match up exactly. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to hide those corners. I'm going to make a tassel for each section. I did 20 laps around that thing, and that made 2 tassels because I cut it in half on each side, and then I cut it in the middle there. See, because I thought it was too long. I don't want them great big, but I do want them, you know, I think they're about 6-7 inches long, and that's what I use. Well, they're 3.5 inches long when I fold them in half. So that makes the length of the strands 7 inches, and then half is 3.5 inches. And then by the time I cut it all off, I know you guys probably know how to make a tassel, but once I cut it all off, then I trim it up and make it, you know, shorter, because you know you got a long piece here and a short piece there, so I try to make it all even. So I use my old trusty dandy yarn needle again, and I thread one of those tassel strings through it, and the other one I leave out, and I just pull it through and tie a basic knot in it, and that's how it's attached to that pillow. So I'm going to tie the last one on, and I am absolutely in love with this. I'm going to put one in each one of my armchairs in my living room. I just love it. It's just absolutely so stinking cute and fluffy. I want to thank you guys again for joining me, and I hope you come back tomorrow for our 10th day. I've got 3 more in this series, and I can't wait. Merry Christmas.